Advantage 1 is the grid is being pushed to its breaking point. Extreme weather combined with failing fossil fuel extraction prevents widespread cascading blackness upset as an uptake of local distributed energy resources and distributed transmission. It will be impossible to say that the catastrophic impacts of that Shank 23. Increasing frequency intensity, extreme heat wildfires, which was shooting the conventional generation, increasing unavailability to extreme weather. There are nutrients and other forms of during elements which are filling excess extreme remains high. Extreme heat caused by outages of regular cities, intermittent periods, and breathing half of this possible. And that will push up to the extreme weather and the air saying that maintain that everything the balance for those the national line demand. Fire for construction during of extreme weather and the rebels by the balance of extreme defensive resolve making the upright balance of frequency around the frequency for policies for reversal. Renewables, the demand pressure just beginning AI, cloud computing data centers, crypto mining, and more make reliance on faulty grid infrastructure and fossil fuel generation on sustainable numbers 24 to use grid infrastructure power than emergency decisions. We're looking at the gas and climate plans to the grid and the cloud computing decisions. The crypto mining all new pressures on architecture, the first execution times, sample transition to the grid utility, the data centers like 25 consume 60% of the grid conversion of the usual the directions to see the activation with has doubled the same time Americans rely on the grid to feel the equals to the national security economy, greener power and even independently of systemic laugh. The grid is a risk from adversarial cyber attacks like this 17 years of development to charges of attacks, attacking the local like Russian meta, others the capability to attention to the cybersecurity users in some time but you part of according to those which are signaling it, repeating the measures of the last 6 weeks and the elevation generation transmission distribution, returning the other technical levels of the language going from these needs is living and manipulated without power, once the person returns to the transmission because of its only the generation of the beginning of the causal widespread. The lack of grid collapse is existential, once it's widespread or long term, there's no recovery record kills hundreds of millions fast to go to the life of the life field advance. This has been running through the gas plants as we basically to the gas station that came up and the elections was not being to cover hundreds of millions less people the worst case of the worst gold war nuclear scenarios is a risk of fire and erosion adaptation capacity to all other accidents present in Second 21. Since electricity is present in additional systems that also that activity could recover the long future could bring the national to the value of could project features and like that. I was referring to the council and trust the capacity for an activist and there is also a risk from terror attacks, collapse, causes existential draconian fires, laser before the users, especially people in the region and vertical waters, lost raising material, and the arrest with the collapse of the circuit, physical, and some things documents, possible circuit, and repeat, and direction of fusion, and most pressure gas, and environment, but it over every season that Chernobyl second surrounds it is we lose the transmission, it was a curious protecting all the substations as difficult to get services to lose power plants and transmit target stations to get some the factors to finish it, transmission networks as well as lies not good, but it's able for years to single accident, potential or to overnight actually more than evidence to give you a videological reason we can shoot out, not just about the church society, it also keeps overcoming alcohol, material, goes next to the threat, and grid collapse releases bioweapons as Marquis 17 surface of light, protectors, teachers, protectors, campuses, disastrous, dangerous events, Asian existence cannot be afford to lose power, and escape the BSL for labs are essential. The risk is growing as most 13 academics research academic scientists become a most centralized environmental experiment is built to be to interact with these easily, which results in more science government person for labs are using knowledge sciences to ensure working with the organisms as they using possible to use the access to the virus to if it's tolerated. They are worthy into this realistic sciences using super version to vaccines and vaccines with this data is an indicator of the future. Advantage 2 is AI. AI innovations on processing for electricity, independent generation capacity, and upgrading transmission is key. There's Ross in national deployment of investigation and integrating able to handle AI as low innovation across package with zero. Engineering was used to energy purpose research regarding AI, trying to get to look at as we consider the development of infrastructure could be affected as there's going to be here. Problems with the majority of integration of the European national and national transmission build up of transmission is key. That's going to make that 24 minutes searching where to go about China and talking about the argument about the security and about how infrastructure shelter managed AI that's where announced that we're speaking in the operational all the way down the power of the investigation right? Power open other transmission the friction with the back knowledge while that's still generous maintaining the AI lead is existential Chinese AI causing power transition blocks and double autocratic norms and it's misled AI misled enough safe AI global the Shank 23. The risk control AI is one of the fast ones that events exist and has 20 countries as ideas. These are the fellow parts of the community more sources to idea about the effect of policy on for research business studies and second to purpose of the foundation of human AI. Use neural networks of human taxation, business structures, and first apply with it. It will be significant that every activities and technically government analysis and intelligence centers for us to apply the role in the role of law companies to place over China. Terms of the AI, the country has one of the single top charging China with a transparent representation of the talk to be living service charging service automated to do series of levels of embrace and events you can have decisions is propagated as any agent by members of the press of the content of the agent and the future. Well, I use it for the rock music and development of the super is in long as well and discovery. Short is that for the get to be fashion and resources and is what's market and practical talent. And probably like the of the prosperity of the project and goal and reason it also brings us and having access global societary and AI is excellent description of the result of societary and is because of actually even the constitution of official is right even if nothing was kind of work and the responsibility of the vulnerability but the challenges of the circle of business so easy to the set of video is long if you reference the and if you feel very they're part of the solid so our AI has weapons but that's a controller key this is also 24 as I put the conference going to be community has a general down to the again and just the development of talks purposes and testing to the versus organization with about accessibility AI converted and keep up with the big text and the references to supposed to hear AI operated safely is intended AI driven power transition also great power war and it was also locked in about the extinction of 2023. Orbit of the Commission is the Richard is going to take the civilization of the House of the Sunday Service of the Richard, and it's not about the visa for public service, but it was going to be the actual matter. No, this is not the side of the development extinction of war to avoid the world's other efforts for problem police. The change the Victoria Station used the Victoria Station used inflation institutions the Victoria Royal Solution and it also attack and the Royal Institution I think which is not the structure it's something that we feel if more real bit of efficiency just authorities use inflation housing just is also built here is the value lock in the effect of the Georgetown major global catastrophe, solvency. The United States government should ensure competitive market participation by clean energy resources and wholesale electricity markets, including the market-based instrument for aggregated virtual power plant participation and prevention of minimum offer price rules, and enforced by subjecting interstate transmission operators to notice and common procedures and action plans of the next and backstop transmission authority. The plan does two things. First, it ensures market access for distributed energy resources like such as EVs and roofs and solar. Those resources are here but aren't able to aggregate into virtual power plants that blocks their participation in wholesale electricity markets as 24. Failure to do something to develop energy technology at a perfect syntax to develop those very ready real energy aggregation instead of for investment development for solar EVs and other years includes the community solar and build up tools to develop and energy aggregation as it's very hard to consider market to be versus the scale there's really national market and energy and give communities just a high voltage reach market aggregation and solar aggregation and aggregation and years as all the potential to use much of energy there for the area will accelerate build up their years can only years even everything must be about the services and lower the customer cost subject to the inflation period that are cover is looking at the ability of possible development of results with the cost curve DER or block of aggregation because these solutions are deliberately discriminating against them. These solutions gatekeepers and they leverage behind us proceeding to the income to priorities income resources this rise 24. The tech is the issue rate regulation because it is a few years of competition which parts here applications that gatekeepers do some control the competition details and sugar very often and occasionally production has been further and the level of years and one versus one of the job of the organization result is the opportunities of the year package with most market operations and packaging ready and integration to some of the partnership students regard to the organization potential yields leveraging process paper package for advantage of result like DB create regime these will have the same advantage now the proceedings of the plan solves aggregation by creating fluorescent governance energy markets which makes utility proceedings transparent and ensures DER access to the years and possibility of business maximum allowing organizations resources and for continues to to plug with us over the course of the last 8 months and you have any further session for the period of is working to remain balance regard to corporate like organization for this is a problem of self organization recommended that I'm essentially the energies really necessary for the hard luxury situation nothing else in the plan but the process adequate the market for inadequate the second thing the plan does is build nationwide high voltage transmission which is key to interregional renewables to the grid it must be interregional and cross state lines that's measured at 23. Interregional electrical cost supply demand. All locations of interregional investment because not much energy for processes of regional different to speak to. Not a substance supply average also been neighbors level of reasons also to be also to be about the crossing as also to be considered and the ability to region share to provide transmission. Finishing the last card. The brief friends self report was actually version cycle and for structure traditional being for example 30 or 7 2015 Substandard for example, 30 percent of the journal government's party international regional standard only arrangement work well. It will be pluralistic rules governance just on middle shortcomings and corporate governance. Okay, good. Okay. Ooh, actually 1 second, I need some water. Okay, yeah, I'm good.
How does the plan solve cyber attacks?
Argument is that we would make the grid resilient to cyber attacks. We don't need to prevent people.
How so? How does the plan make it resilient?
The plan does 2 things that are important for resiliency. The first is increased integration of distributed energy resources. These are things like rooftop solar that instead of being centralized are distributed across many points, which makes them more resilient to outages in one locality. The second thing the plan does is it builds transmission lines, which means that if electricity goes down in Illinois, they can import in electricity from Michigan, which increases overall resiliency.
The bioweapon scenario, the internal leak that you read is one paragraph long, and it says that the military needs to have direct control of an asset as mission critical as a microgrid. So it's saying that the military needs its own air-gapped energy sources. How does the plan do that?
I disagree with your characterization of the internal link. The Marquise card is specific about a U.S. military facility that has bioweapons, but the Wilson evidence also gives examples of BSL-4 labs, which exist all across the country and are the most advanced bioweapon research facilities that exist in the U.S. Each of those labs.
Where does the impact
also
evidence say that the power outages in a grid causes those things to be released?
Well, yeah, but the Marquise card says that.
Yeah, but the Marquise card is about the military.
Well, sure, but it's like at research facilities, if the power goes down, you can't keep hold of you can't secure those bioweapons and research materials.
The AI
Because like
scenario.
security systems rely on electricity, those things are in like.
How does an American lead prevent other countries from developing AI in a misaligned way?
Yeah, so the Zhang card says two things. One, if the US is the lead developer of artificial intelligence, we have more leverage to set the rules of the road in how other countries use artificial intelligence. Second is that the Zhang card also says that middle powers want to buy the AI that is most effective and advanced, and if they buy it from America, then there are certain end-use conditions that would prevent its autocratic use.
How does the plan ensure fast development of AI? It only provides more energy.
Well, our argument is not that we speed up AI development, it's that we prevent development that is happening now from cratering. Because there will be
development is occurring at a steady and relatively moderate pace now. The plan doesn't speed that up, it just prevents it from collapsing due to lack of electricity.
What are AI enhanced bioweapons? And what evidence says that a US lead in AI prevents other countries from weaponizing it?
Well, so those are both internal links above. One, it says international standards, and two, it means that countries buy our tech, which is safer, more secure.
Yeah, but that doesn't stop China or Russia from using AI in their bioweapons.
Well, yeah, but it prevents global dissemination of that AI, which drastically lowers the risk of bioweapon release via artificial.
The impact evidence is not about intentional deployment from like a state actor, or at least not from Russia or China.
And so like AI will generate bioweapons, and separately, good AI is key to solve because of things like detectability, coming up with solutions to pandemics, stuff like that.
Does anyone have a timer we could borrow? Ours just died.
Oh yeah, you can use mine.
Seven. Grid. AI. Is everyone good? First off is DOR, this time natural gas is up, the scaling of DOR is displaces the about around 21, natural gas increase the cost of energy, natural gas outpaces the third displacement of renewable energy sources. Wind and solar increase from 2.3% to 2.10%, gas represents a large proportion of electricity generation mix than renewables, despite the dominance of gas turbines exist renewable energy decreasing as yields from wind and solar advancements of battery storage generation targets support. Yes, the Germany self-extinction target 19 middle, brings the energy security market to American hydrocarbon status, oil, ground and security China, and the United States US vital competition and with the dominance is indispensable. Yes, deals with adversarial China and Russia modernizing projected power. Yes, gains leverage and influence oil. tensions and choke points surround Gomer's and Alabama development points, push for energy self-sufficiency for military focus on emerging threats, Africa, Korea, and SCS energy dominance, create token friendship, prevents opposed. Next off is topicality. MBI requires the app to place a price on carbon Brazil and on and market-based instrument defined as referred to an instrument that places price on GHGs either via tax or indirectly via carbon trade. The plan is not that exchanges transmission, which destroys limits of ground, makes it possible to deny. Next off is a tax cut this app. It passes Mitchell 130 cuts provide period for Congress balancing. Factions will be payers likely reform succeeds included in corporate tax cut, whereas likely Trump's project fails. Climate fights blow up each other. Domain 24 Trump's limited on climate Johnson under pressure from English considered the speakers in interest in climate and double. That is a big thing on Jenna Johnson said Republican traffic work cut greens, spending attack energy actions and amount regulatory standards mandates fueling more expensive Johnson promises to blow towards regulatory state tax cuts are key to space colonization. Winning 24. Policy effect, commercial space solar city, Trump favors tax cuts, measures significant growth, and creation tax programs to increase taxes and increase commercial space countries to now money to build rocket ships and lunar landers, and also depends on commercial space sectors, launch companies, lower cost of launching into orbit administration can institute tax increases will have welcome to space efforts, multi-planetary colonization, forensic extinction, rated 21, becoming multi-planetary protected humans 1-6, a chance of going extinct essential terrorists are essential asteroids, volcanic eruptions, stellar eruptions, and human race sending global as about weapons, ocular loss all at once, by establishing small posts, risk being destroyed, significant potential, certain classes and adapters, significant accidents, radiation, diversifying, and effective mitigation strategy. Next off is a capitalism critique. The failure of emergence of climate change causes worldwide authoritarianism as capitalism disintegrates beyond 3R. The company remains in the market basket as well for solutions and reaching coming access to like voluntary corporate commitment that have proven waste of paper reports from on. Capitalism is unsustainable extinction. The alternative is planned economy. It's mutually exclusive. Lecture add out 4-2. Development, measuring increment prices, conditions, disease, and inequality should must place exploitative authority capitalist sustainability outfits will be climate prices on wage changes on new rapid keywords. While first and just ecosystems pleasure breaking and resting in clean energy more coal and gas. No one is compatible with limiting heating prioritizing distraction and influencing trade, politics, and economic response or attractive practices. Those of cash off the boundary for loss disease values with like being called out cash off more. The twice prosecutors will find pledges not kind of commissions that are reproducing storage about fiscal stability, about disposing changing ecosystem systems, pillars of life, typically universal productivity through breeding, monocultures, fertilizers, pesticides, and software, agricultural disease, spreading diseases, fertilizer related emissions, project renewable energy, just policy needed to place, extract modern emphasizes sustainability different. Cash off key crisis shift economic structures must shift from wealth to sustainability as well. Next off is the energy campaign. The United States federal government should invest in deploying hydrogen energy, Russia 21 installations, deploying energy, cracking hydrogen, and recruiting for hydrogen, sectors including normalized transport and industrial microgrid services, perfect test hydrogen resources, much reliable, irradiated, unstable, offering reliable long-duration backup power and power, industry responsive grid instability, outlaw overloading, spent fuel pods, insert outread in yellow. Overloading should be outlawed in code. Fuel should be removed towards property, transferring national and spent. Fuel companies to track cost and spend less than 4 billion. Island military bases, including Fort Derrick with air gap micrograves, Marquis, and R-17 would be yellow. The military needs to have their commercial acid and micrograves, 70 most critical power systems are probably provided, including the ones that protect vast legal duties and artificial intelligence that enable artificial intelligence to receive criminal penalties, criminal penalty, air sequences, and human intelligence, and criminal intelligence, and self-interest. Highly possible to establish constitutional actions developer, and strong AI subject responsibility, market card, act responsibility. Consensus built with adversaries on AI safety, impose expert controls on chips from adversaries, 723. By personal safety, you can have enforced agreements with modern winning international organizations, possible to arrive consensus building through expert CVMs or treaties imposing expert controls. Next off is a cyber campaign. The United States federal government should declare a neutral vulnerability posture and grid space that creates dialogue and solves escalation. John 22. Currently, which leaves room for misjudgments for foreign governments to how useful some specific behavior from mutual subterfuge, faith in not stating elimination powers, not attacking the judge, surveillance of the future, talking about 26 years, conflict against Russia, mutual not to have considered Russia, targets, infraction to be a doctrine that is question against China, has own concerns of vulnerability and puts sense of tracking and adversaries, but we worth if they can do this, understanding his balances, this big defense plan generates unilateral cyber defense, which doesn't exist now. That creates first track tensions with China and Russia, June 22. Operations with defense and tech can unbind the balances understanding use Chinese national integration down to servers and disrupt access to Chinese associates with the communication transformation. Yes, beliefs of the defense of China interpreters realize and bring restaurants sharing which will unilaterally negating and vulnerability means the US can no longer credibly assure it will frame attack China interpreters prelude to disrupt operations. The US escalate nuclear war through miscalculation. Microwave training to the US and China authorities separate nuclear and C4I surrounding threats. Difficult to attack economic confidence and to turn exacerbate war subject to aggressiveness and confidence in one risk to one state and to subject adversaries convention forces of PCPM. Could proceed to beginning of a new war. Next up, actually great. One, blackouts rise and secrets are going to go down. Groups have not demonstrated capabilities to reduce resilience and targeting networks and on cause blackouts within one center criteria towards an operation loss to localize not possible killing is unlikely. 2, solar storms, dump radiation, insert in gray. 3, no radiation impacts over 19. Less was accidents in nuclear, so it's been safe deaths of 4,000 proven lucky has been discovered by multiple data chemistries of 10% higher when realized survivors in the most cancer center never like a dream. What about technology suffer? Catastrophic killing animals, swinging atoms crashed. Tiny fuel was worse than the matter. Escapes with instant death throws, vanishingly small, around 204 bow terror, fail P-18. Biological agents, terror, natural economics, and advantage, realistic dangerous trace on the rising. One of the criminal nature engineering comics free by engineering. I don't think we are. Various makes in the Eastern Republic. Practices and identify antibiotics overcome EBR and develop vaccines, journalistic habits. Availability of gameplay odds. 5 labs are super secure. Tell me 17. Labs require unique code access space and questions. They are different coming in once a complete maintain questionnaires to disasters, shelter facility, fragmentation, and prohibit entries for water dynamic and new advanced and escapers to ways from the samples, cabinets, precious doors, airtight, and gasketed airs, purified and when incinerated. 6. The evidence concedes it kills 20 million only, not existential AI. The turns is stable on break future merger practicals around my first track stability and cost to turns out for the what is future non capabilities are going to provide to cabin nothing to that nor should be to rapid advancement ensure states less come to detect breakthroughs for us that more vulnerable as well one intelligence as well when we reliable now the shadow future track their stage only form stability to land first track anything that unminds stability AI animation uniquely unminds second track reuniting miscalculation and race the bottom turns case number 722 AI risk stability speed and decision making based on automation device and trust in complex systems increase risk of errors failures on EW systems there's some miscalculations which affect competence in cybersecurity delivery systems, proving surveillance nuclear facilities, integration and conventional systems, military companion miscalculation, escalation, reduces stability by introducing new threats, increasing upgrading ability speed, encourages the companies to use pursuing integration by a non-transparent way forward, nurse development, increasing access to information, stability caps, arms facing ensures all nuclear escalation, unwinding at causes extinction, Mikowski 24. New comics, increasing threats of nuclear escalation, introduction of technical systems, leaders, national groups on the nuclear, conflict, nuclear deterrent, because retaliation, stability, updates, states, and non-centers, and first rank, seven, strike, existence, states, retaliate through anti-theory, stability, results, and subsidy escalate fear, restricted to attacks, learning conflicts, innovation, make others less clear, new systems, prevention, dilemma, needed to racing, capabilities, and change to the open sound, spin-off, political war, totalitarian economy solves AI best, US-led AI is existential, chain 18. Chinese socialist economy provides a solution to motivate advances less sensitive and preparing hands of private companies to like after own interest companies go with responsibility to provide security towards the property capitalism and the dictatorship of AI outcomes and social diversity. You should not be allowed to possess powerful strong states and should exercise safety to destroy China's economy harnesses for protection for the whole properly regulated celebrate AI. China's peaceful and military buildup is defensive. It is designed to create stable deterrence range when it is lower evidence not evidence to come from China's going to replace the US. It is not done in the super global powers, not even leaders based security preeminence and supposed to parity with the US. China's it is routinely stated not developing military dominance efforts to match potential foes capabilities such as willingness to achieve stable balance. Efforts by the US to align AI drives it underground to be controlled by rogues with no precautions. Pre-NES 22. Efforts to control AI military drive underground versus advanced to prevent encountering research behind capital scientists and rogue regimes under inadequate precautions. Studies, documents, and official statements prove Chinese AI development supersedes the West's. Tatlo 19. China aims to dominate global AI and take control of the systems, equips of videos, travel when the tech race AI on 1,000 papers. Children is wanting to have a chance to be on an official CB announced 50-year national plan. China developed 100 million state money AI scientists say she offers courses Asia pursued a high-speed AI research highlighted by Georgetown and computer channels on my packet 70,000 Chinese scientific communities and China series pursuing ancient and current language studies have been signable in lack of certain preoccupation to speech to the documents by officials saying the name for first member of AGI requests for AGI one public support and deep official support in China's Silicon Valley to help with research.
I might time back. Thank you. Okay. You good?
Yeah.
Okay. Status for everything.
Status was logical option.
Can you kick planks on the advantage?
Yes.
All of them?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So, Cat K, does central planning include nationalizing the grid?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
What do I mean by that?
How is there demand signals if there's no price signals? How do we know who needs electricity when? How do we get it there?
Consumers can report the amount of energy they need. There's also data.
Do consumers pay for electricity or does the government provide it for free?
The government provides it for free.
Okay. So AI turn, the Zala evidence says, quote, but rapid advances in SNNW in recent years have ensured that all nuclear armed states are less confident than they once were in the survivability of their forces in the future. Why is this unique?
They're less confident than they were in the past, but our evidence still concludes that there is the threat of retaliation, that there's still this sense of mutual vulnerability.
What part says
mutual vulnerability. If that is true, then why does AI matter? If that holds despite mutual vulnerability, or
No, the reason why there's mutual vulnerability is because no one side has a super strong lead in artificial intelligence.
That line clearly indicates the countries.
No. Like the rest of the card says that none can threaten the taboo. Even though the arsenal is evolving, it's still.
Like your internal link is about perception.
The internal link is not just about perception. It's about how the plan speeds up the pace of AI development. Even if that's a civilian sector that spills over to the military.
So you have to really speed up AI development.
Well, there are different links that we can go for.
Okay, sure.
And it's obviously linear as well.
Sure. Your cards that say like Chinese AI is better say that this is the case because they will regulate it more, and you also read a card that says regulations drive AI underground. Am I missing something?
The card that says that regulations drive efforts underground is about the United States.
Wait,
but the card about
Chinese regulations not
the card about Chinese AI being good, it's not that China will regulate other countries' AIs. It's just that within its own country, it will ensure that its artificial intelligence is state controlled and does not allow things like their own ChatGPTs to say random stuff, and it will control the kind of information that is able to be
Chinese
released.
AI controls not also drive AI underground in China?
I just think that those are two different arguments.
Okay. Sure. The cyber DA, this link card is about the US hacking Chinese OCO capabilities.
No. The June card is about the grid. It says that when the United States unilaterally updates its grid, that means that the United States is no longer vulnerable to cyber
forward
attacks.
operations, i.e. the US.
No. It says that both sides have defend forward operations. Both sides have
What line in
OCO.
this card do you think says?
The grid is highlighted multiple times in the piece of
Yeah,
evidence.
it's about US hacking Chinese OCOs and, quote, kicking them out of access to the grid with the Defend Forward program, which is a counter OCO hacking program.
That describes the strategies that both countries have, but it is only when defense goes away that reduces mutual vulnerability, which is what triggers the link.
Yeah, sure. Do y'all like have? I can see if I have an extra time actually.
We got one from Holly.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
classic amount of one.
Really interesting. Give it time. I like the legend. Okay, is that one good for a lower? Grid advantage. AI advantage. T. The cap K. Advantage counterclaim. Agenda. The DER, PA, and then the site account.
Do you play with pencil?
Is that one good? Stanford's good. Okay. Concession to give evidence is game over. It doesn't good collapse. Every request is adaptive capacity for all the research events. So it turns out ways any impact when they go for the Larson evidence is terrible. It's responding to a single DHS report about Russian hackers imminently taking down the grid. It's not a public crisis, which is the combination of demand, supply shocks, and extreme weather, all of which overrides the grid's capacity. And it can see that prerequisites to future deceptive events are increasing. Every inserted and green solar storms do it thumbs the plan. Makes it more resilient by increasing distribution and building transmission lines. The radiation impact even is wrong. Terminating virus blanket the atmosphere with cesium, which lots of the ability to produce food and ends life on Earth. Bioterror defenses and apply. Our internal link is state-developed bioagents and BSL-4 labs, which means that terrorists not having capabilities to build them is irrelevant. Yes, labs are secure now, but all of these mechanisms that their evidence lists require electricity to channel this evidence not some grid labs, which is a much larger internal link now. The AI advantage. There's no link or internal link to the term. The app does not affect military AI or innovation or adoption. It's about the commercial AI. The military will do whatever it wants to. There's no uniqueness for an AI development in the US now, and it's inevitable, which just proves that it ends up traceability and their evidence does not isolate an internal link for when in the future it crosses the threshold. 3, the plan does not speed up development, it just prevents current development from creating. 4, their current is not stable. Trump and their evidence is things like hypersonic missile defense and ASW tech, all of which can improve independent of AI. 5, other countries make it inevitable. Russia, Europe, solely question of US commercial technology. 6, other nuclear powers are super insecure now from US nuclear superiority, conventional strike being D7, AI advances solvability comes in. Williams to AI, the ISO protector, any rights falls, increasing the adversary, reducing risk of especially like the nature of the especially in introduction, I can enhance the ability to do anything real possible. The Russian reads fog of war, which is sugar, between sitting, yeah, I can perform special ability to make the ability to make bars, organize, I can never interact with the behavior. Those letters went into nuclear control to place as an electric sugar, one of the else, nuclear launch. So don't have a enable official take opportunities to AI, which is going to be so words you have a warning person sensor and the one ANC not because evidence is not apply. It's not about the speed of the animation, but whether it's militarized, which is inevitable. AI doesn't show counter forceability loss in activity because AI has no locations. Splitting out between AI, which operation off on AI for the balance of dynamics and itself. Not to mention term value of states, nuclear forces, mark at forces, weakening China's second strike is also good because it prevents them from being aggressive. The other term is wrong. Our impacts outweigh causes Chinese AI causes autocratic AI transition, war, and bioweapons, all of which is a much larger impact. It also says what is Yang says it collapses critical infrastructure by China automating zero-day vulnerabilities. They drop the data evidence, so that's infinite impact. They don't have defense to and misinformation. They'll augment it, which is the Zhang evidence, extinction, limit, 19 corruption, infinite multiple exercise, punching, geopolitical, exposing, political, Pacific, Soviet, countries, Canada, Christian target, potentiality, diversity, security, engagement, right, influence, warranty, humans, media, and decisions to God, accountability, national make messages about war, economy, law enforcement, housing, production, energy, is an existential threat. The Zhang card is wrong. Global democracy to regulate AI now, which is the 1AC Zhang evidence, which proves the sets resolved to swing evidence doesn't apply. It's about China's military motivations, not their motivations to sell commercial AI, which is our internal link there. Frank's card is wrong in the context of the US. IP rights and free innovation means that the US has the right balance of incentives, which prevents underground that's 1AC Zhang evidence, but it proves that China's authoritarian economy is worse, which is a double turn. But the Zhang card above Freitas isn't just about the US and China AI, it's not inevitable. Yes, they are committed, but US can still win if we have sufficient knowledge to speak topicality. One, we need planted technical indirect price and GHG emissions by privileging zero carbon tech and wholesale markets. The mechanism is market auctions, which is indistinguishable from applying the social cost of carbon to counter creation and BIs are a category distinguished from control. They include financial incentives and market access market people segments where they try to affect our articles adopted the US groups of the most troubles you can control rates and info the secure and sermon of MBS and field fight. Desire behavior more trying to be the less than the division for children access to MBS and cash subsidy grants, loans, tax credits, deductions, and exemptions. The city identified the control rates purchasing, BBM funds interconnection and meeting access to the because they have low barriers to transfer transfer. New developers transmission is not the reason we're in MPI. The reason is market access, so the violation doesn't apply. Prefer our information. One is precision park is a comprehensive taxonomy of all renewable policies is most reasonable and aligns with the lit. Moselle is defining in the context of a single essay, and it's also in the context of climate policy, not energy policy, which means that
small entrance policy into LD being too nice and then makes to make scale and boring, which is a D rule. C, functional limit solve, committed control, states picks. Atomic language impact turns process the block inlet bias, and that will always be fine, plus the app is extension transition has to be fortunate at 0.5 approximately transition that guarantees they get DA's renewal scale, which is the core of the topic, reasonability, their trans ways to find MBI, so they call substance credit card, working level distance. Absolutely different to we have testify the rest of the unit is given its broad and vague. Now the cap K1 framework, where the consequence of the plan is the metamaterial false stuff will anything else crushes fairness and clash because it's going to do research that makes possible for the act to win. 2, no international private or utopian fiat, it's contrived, not written in literature. Eliminates all actors and self-litigation for trying to use U. 3, the plan 39 is regulating capitalism, which solves the argument by the plan capital because it is very necessary or necessary to go the information of harm removing subsidies that's more multiple survivors of the green innovation, so from loans alternatives forward. More sustainable growth, there's no authoritarianism now from capitalism, which is the entire 1AC, but the alt causes it. Kaninsky and 22, why would we break down to democracy rather than implementation that having data for separate origins, what reason love and military on democracy within the middle social parents to just people more to democracy. That's a DA because the rapid evidence of 1AC totalitarianism is existential. If the nationalists agree, they cause blackouts because there's no way to manage it, and they cause cyber attacks on community. One of the media to China to fear terrorism and war nation fear centers land view HD for special documents to make fancy. Plus you can't find out just to get everyone for free. It spikes demand because the Elon Musks of the world will drive up if they're not having a brand new kilowatt, which causes grid collapse from over demand, and it causes hyperinflation because the government doesn't have infinite money and no one in C card says they can spend it. So if the block reruns, then the one area gets 2 cards. Now the advantage counterplay 1 perm, do both 2 perm to the planet, a combination of the planets, 3 links to benefits, super controversial, which means it looks at politics. The planet is key. There's no hydrogen or sand to use function. As much as we're sitting on economic station, high pressure, electric ability, electric current, electric action. Introduce liquid countermass storage, it's on liquid hydrogen gas limits. Hydrogen storage against solid spent fuel pools don't solve. There's still an explosion, even if the size of the pool is smaller, so there's still large tolerance to the impact. To island fields, constant ultimately that do expected. Infinite abilities to help with us to gas protect outside increase the weight solid fuel by the areas. We increase the typical records all natural gas meters of the tax, facilitate to develop surrounding communities, brown water, wastewater, housing, all babies, useless for communication, doctors, stop performance, detect debates. Also solve BSL4 labs because those are owned by the military. The AI claims fail. Legal duties are irrelevant if we can't develop them because there's no electricity. Consensus is that consensus bill is that with the advantage fails. China says no to the proposals that cooperate. Export controls also fail. They can't sufficiently show off Chinese development, which is proved by the Biden administration, and the U.S. development is key to sell to other countries. Now, the politics DA1, there is no link. The plan is executive action, and authority was granted by Congress. They don't need to construe the plan is requiring Congress. It's unpredictably enforceable literal means to find information both sides. Here is the active rate, and the plan is popular because it's required federal spending plus per action flies with radars, for which regulations can also really show people radar streams, but there's no vote switching. Even if lawmakers don't like the plan that does not connect to their incentives to pass tax reform, nothing passes. Congress is responsibility to the every single one of the parties working there is much as to one area, 0 votes fair, consensus for failure. They're bored by the neck, they're going to conservatives set up as a right of public national secret votes. Democrats, Catholics, that's what generic realistic conspiracies, more hostilities, regardless of the violence and issues. Backers are looking states, problems to be developed to every turn. That would not cost this leadership and numbers, debt ceiling nominees, funding June parity session, what's happening to do with numbers, we can glance on the debt ceiling account bill. These have been sworn to come to begin the agenda, the rest of this committee fill, no extension, hardliners 2-bit Morgan. 159 meeting, and with that until it's hard to move the public so the tax cut the cost, which costs much $3 to make sure officers was widespread to the freedom Congress, one blanket to develop control going up on to be serious, like a little ultra violent and spending her. English is probably going to be much more because it's really frustrating. It's something having historically done, or it's inevitable because Republicans won it and they want to be able to deliver on campaign promises, but it's not key to space call. Obviously, we either inevitably go to space because of political will, or we won't because it's too hard. Should again, 19 demographic knowledge of Tasbury, reaching into it's very small, but it's such a position of reaching which challenge production space and no impact because they're trying to die. The plan solves emerging threats now, so there's no reason we have to go to space now. The DERDA1, there is no link. All demand is not under the plan. The way that electricity markets work is that they choose from the lowest bidder up until the highest until all demand is met. So there's no trade-off natural gas, and it causes grid collapse opportunity for jobs, flooding gas, because shut out high intensive of the special load density. The river gas of urban and air is hot plains country. It's much more required to less spatial and answer. Extreme persons like gas and community force offline, where temperature like within the policy that is now just all this gas. Capacity. There's no internal link to this in the one we see. They were like planters off natural gas, suddenly energy independence impact. So when they were going to get new answers, but there's no impact to it, the one we see Sakara evidence is the U.S. leverage from other things like military strength, which is not changing the plan, and it's talking about leverage over oil, which they don't have an internal link to, plus no impact around making two policy industries. Energy most passage which have the U.S. or financial independent, no, the financial independent is stands for, but insulate U.S. no, the U.S. not being energy independent. Now, the cyber counterplan 1 from 2 that solves declaring mutual vulnerability is sufficient to solve their internal links. There's no link to the plan. 2, their evidence is about defensive cyber operations, not making the grid more resilient. Why the fuck would China or other countries care if we make our own grid more resilient? It's obviously disproven by every action under the Biden administration that attempted to solve it, and they didn't appoint to align it cross-sex. So if they read new links, we get new answers. Conditionality is bad because lawlessness, the offense is good. It's key to fairness. Let's reach out to the FTC. government to desensitize the stereotype strong education disco solves, and they cause the Taiwan invasion cutting off some 18 vegetables. Talking about divided management of the world, nation, called down with the external holiday Harris, and with the liberation accident, social preserve, revealing power balances. Mark power balances.
Power balances.
Yeah, the creating card is marked at power balances.
Is that in the doc?
Yeah, it's under the advantage counterplan in the doc.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the F6 header that's like Taiwan dash C.
Got it. Are you good for cross-X?
Yeah.
The one I see interlinked about polycrisis, how does a distributed grid solve?
Right, so there are two main solvency claims in the 1AC. The first is increasing penetration of renewables and distributed energy resources.
Why does that overcome the polycrisis?
Right, so
You
the
said
neat
there are all
thing
these
about
problems across
distributed
different
energy resources is as opposed to status quo centralized power plants that all exist in one place. Distributed resources are distributed.
But
so
why
things
would
rooftop
those
solar.
things like heat waves, which you've got evidence about, those natural disasters,
Right, it's
why would
about
they
the
not be
ability of the grid to be more segmented. So it's like if
Isn't the grid segmented now?
goes,
There are dozens of different grids across the United States.
no,
Why is that one of them?
there are three, and sources of generation are centralized, which means they're more likely to
The
go down. So like if a hurricane
AI
takes down one
advantage-
solar panel, there are many others, which allows resilience.
The AI advantage, the Cox evidence says integrating AI into ISR creates stability.
Yep.
How does the F integrate AI into ISR?
Well, so that doesn't make sense because that's your link to the turn. Your link to the turn is that the US develops AI capabilities, and those, for some reason...
But my question is, how do you solve this piece of offense?
Well, so we don't think the plan links the turn because our advantage is about commercial AI,
How are
not
zero-day
military AI.
cyber attacks?
But in order for you to win a link to the
My
turn,
next
you have
question
to win
is,
military integration.
how are
with
zero
the-
days different from cyber attacks or traditional cyber attacks?
Sorry, how is what?
Zero-day attacks different from traditional cyber attacks?
Because as opposed to like a hack in like the middle of the night or whatever, it's that China has infiltrated the grid and is lying in wait. They're distinct. The JM and Strauss.
And why is that more uniquely escalatory, or why is that not? Why does our impact defense not apply to it?
Well, because your impact defense is about like how you respond to those kind of attacks. The impact that we read to it is distinct because it says it takes down critical infrastructure, which is the deeper evidence.
We read defense of critical infrastructure. The
I don't
misinfo,
really agree, but
misinfo add-on you read.
Yep.
Trump, like Twitter, all of these sources also have lots of misinfo. Why is China worse?
well, yeah, of course, but it's a difference in scale and degree. Like artificial intelligence is able to spread information at a pace and scale.
But
unlike
US
that
AI
just-
would also be able to create deepfakes. And
Well,
it's
except
already
that
being used now.
USAI will have safeguards implemented
Sounds
as well as
good.
US privacy laws. You have not read evidence that says USAI would spread this information. Only
You read
the
evidence that Chinese AI is safer than US
Well,
AI.
that card
It's more
doesn't
likely.
say that or is in the context of this information. Our Zhang evidence says that Chinese AI would uniquely augment misinformation, and that's more
Why
escalation.
is US AI more susceptible to things like the polycrisis or like the one you see internal links about collapse? And why does that not apply to countries like China?
Wait, I don't understand. The internal link to the AI advantage is that we just literally don't have enough electricity because there aren't transmission lines going from electricity generators to where AI is produced. The polycrisis frame just
theory
applies to
was
how we think about grid
International fiat, utopian fiat, condo. Was there
Yep.
anything else?
collapse. That's it.
Okay. advantage counterclaim? Advantage 1. I mean the cyber counterclaim, then the advantage counterclaim. Advantage 1. Then T. I'll take a second thought. Did you all say fan in the vacuum?
No.
Just 3 seconds.
Cyber counterclaim, advantage counterclaim, grid advantage T.
Correct. Are we all good to go?
I need to download that. Okay, I'm good.
Alright. Condos with some sociological option 1, networks after a personalized speech, this looks outside the box, fairness, too logic to judge people, revert to the status quo through testing or refuting after multiple angles, fosters better policy analysis, diminishing utility is too inevitable, and there's no impact because the app can leverage deficits, dispo sets, it's uncondo because the negative cannot read mutually exclusive counterplans, and there's no community consensus and process counterplans, and that paying sports firms, advantage counterplan. Group the permutations, they both lead to the net benefit via the inclusion of the plan. Politics is not the net benefit to the advantage campaign. Plank 1 certainly solves the grid. Hydrogen energy unleashes reliable and long durational power that is an alternative to traditional forms of grid, which overcomes the problems with it now. That's the Reshef evidence. The Tracy evidence is 2 lines long. It's also 8 years old. And the card is about European countries, not about American deployment of hydrogen, which only our evidence is specific to. It solves and is also not cost of the case. Only hydrogen can provide reliable microgrids, with Junkian and readily to do it. Micros are following current trends to decarbonization. These cannot be fulfilled by intermittent energy transition by substitution of fossil transfer through renewable hydrogen. Although marginal cost of renewables is low, cost of storage are high. Paying 2 solves zirconium fires. Overloaded spent fuel pools is what causes those fires to start. Moving them to dry storage zeros the chance of combustion. Even if the grid goes down, it doesn't matter because they're just being in a hole somewhere that is isolated from other spent fuel pools. This is exactly what the impact evidence advocates for. That's the one you see least evidence. So there's no chance of a deficit. Paying 3 solves bioweapons. The impact evidence has attacks to C because DoD systems are tied to private and civilian grids, not its independent microgrid, which certainly solves. That's when you see Marquise islanding works, nuclear reactors overcome shortages. On just 11. Island research small reactors and we might be willing to risk reprisals via fact military ops without telecoms and logistics America ops to be comprehensive country will continue to make spaces into stability analysis and reduce incentive for an attack. There are evidences that assume a long, more permanent source of energy like solar or wind, which doesn't require a separate grid in order to fund this microgrid, so it's unresponsive. The BSL4 argument is incorrect. We've re-highlighted their internal need, which is about attacks on military vulnerabilities. It does not say that labs are targeted. Now, PAINS 4 through 6 certainly solve AI. Criminal law aligns AI away from dangerous antisocial behavior. They are maximally deterred because they get the death penalty. That's Kaprich-Nokovich. The 2AC deficit makes 0 sense. They do not need electricity to enforce this kind of legal vestige of personhood. It just requires courts to exist. And this solves globally. Terminal IP. One country grants AI LP of adopted flag and others with countries offering mutual recognition. A court same status for the persons and other countries one only take one to recognize the living structure. Cause entire block to do so. Even new AI LP covered other major concepts will follow to footloose AI designers who wish to take advantage of new status. Consensus building solves. No actor wants evil AI, so everyone has an incentive to align it. It's a collective humanity problem like terrorism, which China and America have both empirically opposed. Export controls also solve and prevent China and Russia from accessing the chips in the first place, so they will not even be able to develop any forms of advanced AI technologies. That means even America's grid goes down. That does not matter because China and AI and Russia will not have this AI. That's the Samuel evidence. Case. Grid resilient, it's insulated already, energy is safe, and all of it has critical transportation and backup nodes of prevent collapse. That's Larson. Takes out the grid prerequisite in the overview, means that there's no collapse in the first place. Rehabbing is incorrect. Still concludes that the grid is safe. Polycrisis, demand, supply shocks, extreme weather are wrong. The grid is invincible. Lamport 23, the grid is extremely reliable. Weather have become presidential planners on Christmas, struck 4 substations, house of people. Hardened, we don't get long outages. Systems allow us to recover quickly. The grid is made over 3 convergent regions. It means that if there's a problem in the west, the east should be fine. Whenever cascading to company back, a diverse array of sources, also solar and nuclear, has and coal, pick up the slack. Even with rising demand, weather, and other pressures, no blackouts. I read this card already. The greatest stable, Commons 24, have positive signs, great survival, its most brutal summer yet, and despite record demand avoided blackout tomorrow, considering 2023 was the hottest since 1880. Cross-X got them. Multiple grids is the threshold they set, and that already exists. Lucio 18, the grid does not exist. Actually, 5 grids taking down the grid would be more like lapsing thousands. Talking about the grid article to know what they were talking about redundancy. You can't just break a theme or tend to strike a blackout failure where to off outage in New York and prevent outage in Chicago. No radiation impact. Even the worst accidents are contained. Proven by Fukushima. That's Schellenberger. The impact is highly silly. It's about already used blobs, which means that the radioactive effect will be far less than the blow-up of something like Fukushima or Chernobyl. It also cannot be existential. Even if thousands of miles are contaminated, hundreds of thousands more miles of America would be safe. It also says that solar storms just as easily cause impact by triggering grid collapse, so they cannot solve it. The Tracy spin about their evidence is incorrect. No part of it says that it takes out the atmosphere. It's certainly not substantiated by the evidence, and it's just ridiculous. Obviously, food will survive it. Tracy concedes no bioterror impact. Rogue actors have neither the means nor the motive. They have no labs or scientists, which might not take out the bioleaks impact on disadvantage, but deletes the AI bioweapons impact on advantage too, which 1AC Cross-X said explicitly was about rogue actors. No new 1AR answers. That's the pinker evidence. No lab impact. Labs are steel pressurized and space-suited. Physical barriers like concrete walls means that electric shortages do not result in leaks because the viruses physically cannot get out of the labs. That's a Chamley evidence. Lab leaks impact is also tiny. The impact evidence only says 20 million, and masking and quarantining obviously prevents any sort of existential effect. Pandemics do not cause asphyxia. 20. Highest vitality is Ebola, unclear whether fatality was sustained outside Africa, unlikely death for 90% of and extinction war seems unlikely. Given pathogen impair war, pathogen have to have long incubation time that persons can affect survival in wide temperatures, be dangerous and ranges of genes, pathogens which cause 99% of fatality easy to quarantine. T. MPIs must plus the price on pollution, that's either carbon tax or carbon trade, that's must sell. Anything also brings the floodgates to infinite app mechanisms to affect supply and demand for carbon. The app certainly does not meet our interpretation. Moselle says an MPI puts price on GHGs either directly via tax or indirectly via cap and trade. The plan is market creation, which certainly does neither of these things. Taxes are payments that go to the treasury without compensation. Around 22 taxes, coercion without compensation, taxes of people's contribution to the treasury have to be enforced without receiving a transfer. The Hattori evidence is about Japan and budgetary, not regulatory taxes, which obviously does not apply to this topic instantly happening, and it also does not say that these taxes are not prices on GHGs, just that they're not prices on carbon, which also does not prove that we would limit out these primitives. Even if they're right about this, the plan certainly doesn't meet this evidence. It's not a tax on coal, gas, aviation, or any of the other things listed in this card, so it's not enough we meet card. Now, the counterintuitive sucks. First is that the line about access laws is not about the plan. It's about laws that create property rights for solar and wind access, which appears later in this article. If that's confusing, Park's dissertation, which their article was a trimmed down version of, makes clear that access laws are about creating the legal right to install solar panels on your house, which has nothing to do with the plan, so they do not even meet their own counterinterpretation. The plan is much more accurately described as an interconnected standard for the grid, which Park says is command and control. Second, even if they meet it, their interpretation is a limits nightmare. The Park evidence includes literally any positive financial incentive, from subsidies to grants to loans to tax credits. Subsidies alone are completely unlimited and have no unique subsidies always spread and exist for all types of energy exhaustiveness of types such as direct and indirect fund or liabilities of revenue, including expenditures and excess taxes, provision of goods, potential subsidies include tariffs. Defining these X types is difficult. Subsidies are categorized as resources include broad categories such as fossil fuel and renewables to oil, gas, coal, and nuclear, include electricity, renewable, include biofuel, wind, solar, biomass. Subsidies exist to all parts of value chain such as R&D, extraction, transport, storage, production, refining, distribution, consumption, decommission, i.e. defines subsidies in any action that lowers cost of production, raises the price perceived by producers, or lowers price paid. They also say it includes market access. There's no definition. Market 21 market access, not to define it. It's a little like planning down a cloud. Opens up regulations on trade. Kenta 24 market access will lead over the company or country sell goods and services across borders. They can increase M&A enforcement across sustainability. Pantera 23 M&A to be across sustainable range study. 31 M&A deals including ESG, renewable energy, and planning more. Does affect key ones. Calkins 3 federal enforcement of balance advantage and massive resources, sweeping enforcement of elaborate merger notification systems, respect with Congress and courts. Each new topic area is bad. They allow dozens of subsets, tax cuts for washing machines, removal of subsidy for auction, oil and drilling subsidy removals or increases, eco-labeling, liability options, new markets for hydrogen fuel. Each new app does not link to anything, requires a whole new case neg, limits outweighs, burdens, neg, some issues that favor the app, questions, fairness, or question neg, into uneducational debate. Second is ground. Unique this bad is already dumped cash, Roman 24, billion cash for green energy as federal cash flows in the IRL of the BBIL funnel, billions into clean energy cost not predicted to reach over 1 trillion in the IRL office, usually the tax credits as well as loans, leak quality, econ, oil, innovation are all cooked because subsidies make it volatile military politics will be dog shit, and it's a app that funds things, they artificially shrink link size and make core disadvantages non-unique to topical proposals are indistinguishable from existing climate policy. Net ground is prior, ground outweighs asymmetry makes debate a rigged game, destroying fairness and ruining the next ability. The test when you see no predictability, debatability outweighs small topics are inherently more predictable because there are a smaller list of cases. Norms determine predictability, so voting next solves unpredictability is inevitable because interpretation of words is subjective and shaped by a background, and all of the rehandlings of the public evidence proves that they are more unpredictable. Now, app ground is incorrect. There's plenty of ground. CICC 22. There were 31 carbon trading mechanisms, 30 carbon tax mechanisms implemented or scheduled. Limits outweigh allowing the app to proliferate tiny market adjustment apps leaves the net with no role, but previous small topics like healthcare and nukes demonstrate app innovation will always happen.
Okay, are you good?
Yes.
Alright, I want to start on the grid advantage. The grid advantage, the Clawins card, the last line says, however, this doesn't mean that summer blackouts in subsequent years are not on the way, which seems like it's making a descriptive claim that in the past, massive blackouts haven't occurred, but it agrees with our predictive claim that things will get worse. It's like, why do you think this is defense?
It says that despite some of the worst conditions we've ever seen, blackouts are not occurring, which seems to suggest that even if there's a chance of blackouts in the future,
We read a
that is
slew of
unlikely.
predictive evidence that extreme weather events are getting worse over time, and that demand surges are unprecedented, which means even if we didn't have blackouts in 2023, we're more likely to have them in the future, which your evidence seems to agree with.
You're right that it gives a chance of blackouts occurring in the future, but it doesn't say that it's likely.
Huge card. Actually, no, that's fine. The lab leaks stuff, I guess I'm confused. Why you think there's no, why you think labs are secure now? The only thing you extended was the 1NC channeling card. Every safeguard channeling lists are safeguards that rely upon electricity for things like security systems. So in a world in which labs don't have electricity, why would they still be secure?
Incorrect. The labs are sealed, they have concrete walls, they're pressurized, they're space suited. None of these require electricity to operate. If your argument is that people like invade the lab, there's like people with guns that don't need electricity, right?
Okay, I don't think these are guarded by people with guns, but that's fine. The advantage counter plan, I guess, have you read a piece of predictive evidence that hydrogen is possible in the short term?
Yes, that's both the 1NC and the 2NC evidence.
What lines do you think say that hydrogen is feasible in the short term?
It says that
Like this 2NC card, it just is like hydrogen would be cool to have. The 1NC card also doesn't make a predictive claim that that's a thing that's feasible anywhere in the remote future. So how does it solve grid stability in the short term?
that's incorrect. The 1NC Reshap card says that hydrogen is crucial as we engage in the process of
Crucial,
decarbonization,
but not feasible.
and that the thing to unlock this hydrogen is additional funding and deployment, which is what the contract does.
No, I don't think it says that. It's just like hydrogen can serve as a linchpin to reliability, but not that it's feasible or a thing that exists. But that's fine. The microgrids piece, you just island military bases. So how does it solve labs that don't exist on military bases?
The internal link that you read is about attacks and grid failures and the effect on military bases.
Well, no, the Wilson card.
No, the Wilson card does not tie to grid or electricity. The Wilson card is just an impact card.
Well, but obviously
We
said
rehired our
that-
internal link.
Like but the Marquisi card says grid collapse causes releases at labs. We got a card that says there are labs everywhere. Like obviously.
One in R is you go to T. Yeah. That was 3 seconds. One more set. Is everyone good for an order?
Yeah.
The order is T. Critique. Tax cuts, is that? DR decide. Cyber counter plan. Advantage 2.
Who's doing the bottom two?
What?
Bottom two?
Yeah.
Sorry, Nick. So T critique, tax cuts, DR decide, cyber kind of plan. What was after that?
Advantage 2. AI advantage.
Just utilize.
Yeah, I'm just gonna forgot.
Is everyone good? Functional limits, no traditional moves of econ, oil, invasion are all gone. Boundary size proves out. Straight turns are non-unique to functional limits. Some advocates for any subsidy needs of functional limits will apply. Command and control needs not benefit. It can't stop new market creation. States need not benefit. Loose preemption. Everything else is garbage. Good for one cases that can be fact-checked will be generics. Empirics proved. There's no other constraints or limits to get intern prep to find unique link turns to the bar is low, even if not to question research and turn debate into educational polemics. Reasonability, they aren't reasonable. That's limits. Prefer competing interpretability subjective. That's community consensus. Managed stretch interventions. It's also linked to limits because the combination of all reasonable apps is enormous. Critique, concede perm theory, reject argument, not the team, because anything else causes substance crowd and not going for it solves the offense. Tax cuts, concede impact defense, not going for it. DR, concede impact defense, not going for it. Cyber. Drop the net benefit. Erasure vulnerability goes nuclear. Mutually assured destruction becomes one-sided, which escalates tensions and guarantees the speculation. Paranoid China and Russia adopt modular impostures from perceived threat of catastrophic cyber attacks, which drives both adversaries with preemptive actions that spiral to nuclear strikes. That's good. And Perkovich. Permutation fails. The countenance a declaration on a theodic commitment to cyber policy, any perm is severance or mutually exclusive. The perm's grid protections delete the credibility of announcement. RF mentions defense forward, but it's part of a broader strategy of defense mitigation to remove vulnerabilities from the US's grid space, which causes major powers to lash out of fear. Our evidence says that the United States has not currently contemplated cyber attacks against Russia because of concern that Russia can target US infrastructure. But the plan changes that. DRs and transmission kill mutual vulnerability between US and adversaries in grid space that creates a perception that the US was going to conduct a devastating one-sided cyber attack. China and Russia put their nukes on launch on warning because they fear an attack is coming. The threshold is low. Even doing grid updates creates paranoid perception war, turns the app. Step 20. Ignores what the nature of reducing the nature of accidental nuclear warfare. Cyber strategy against the ability to research the nuclear circular abilities. Unilateral foreign party has high self-defense creates instead of first check receive best practice CCC. Solution steps to be beyond NATO communication and PCI. Foundation for reducing cyberspace. Mutual steps to reduce cyber risks. Neighborhood labeled unfriendly to reduce misinformation, escalation, ideological networks. Enemy engineering hard. Useful developing policies given the lack of confidence. They also concede solvency. The content creates effective cyber deterrence. It publicly declares a stance of embracing vulnerability, creating a verbal commitment to abandoning defensive updates to national grid security. That solves case. Neither side now commit a large cyber operation to sabotage the adversary because they fear retaliation. So they just do small hacks on domestic businesses for economic competition. They drop solvency. No new answers. This solves advantage 1, and they still get answers. Advantage 2. Actually, the Taiwan invasion add-on. First was marked too early, we get the answers when I finish it. 2, it's not about AI. All causes like China's aircraft carriers and nuke modernization. 3, no Taiwan invasion. 3, America is obsessed with the prospect of Chinese invasion of Taiwan. China does not have capability, other options more effective and likely. 4, requires them to win. Advantage 2, internal link, which we'll do now. Advantage 2. Answer the laundry list impacts. No China AI impact. Can't solve. 0 explanation how yes AI can end Chinese surveillance or Chinese exports. China's surveillance state collapsing towards economic headwinds. AI relies on human informants. It's not exportable because of size and cost. No Chinese authoritarian AI payment for. It is people more than an AI developing operations supposed to send with one network of this size to system malfunction. The Chinese have security apparatus is not impossible to explore. As country faces economic headwinds, apparatus becomes subject to new pressures. AI arms oversimplifies and is false. CM 23 and AI refers to some basic grammar system. Speed of no channels starting to regulating AI. China can take slow approach to developing AI because no risk concerned about having secure tech. Impredictable math change between my binary register CCP. Semiconductor sanctions solved. Carbon 24 maybe chip potentials abstract. Just after the layers of primary use restrictions on semiconductor crucial for building and retraining the app will hamper the ability of Chinese companies to build advanced LLMs. Self-imposed political restrictions. Carbon 24 unlike US reference Chinese companies face political challenges. The government requires LLMs to restrict growth, chop-offs, must secure core values, and must not challenge state power. No transition wars. Concede no link to the term which takes this out. The app does not affect military attack, only civilian attack. And concede the other no link argument, which is that the app does not speed up the rate of AI development. These take out transition wars because the transition argument is about military AI and about China, the China dominance in the military space. No impact attack leadership strength. Hold on. King Explain as literature and supporting governments, they want nations copy religion by the rest of nations, make literature, external Sophia, futures include underrated China, no operative war, sustainable given the population, corruption, income inequality, no flows, drive innovation, on single nation to adopt a system, technology, China, threatening to destroy the entire way of life, capability, they have neither the capacity nor the will to displace the US tax and freedoms of China. Once waste management, hegemony, so China's still income country population and multiply my state capital centuries more solid global empire has not followed one war for 40 years. That's just a few small pieces overseas. American license China regards as blatant hegemonic attempts to contain weaknesses of volatility. State bioweapons, missing internal links, who would they give it to, why would they use it? Additionally, the military argument takes this out too because bioweapons are a military technology. No evidence says state bioweapons are existential. Other defense above on danger one applies, and states will deploy bioweapons across the world. Spectrum has countries attacks by nations of noise, weapons are primarily to assassinations, takeoffs, countries abandoned on scale capabilities, no longer seized, given capabilities, conventional operating as determined on utility nations, and first use distributed use as the active route with uncertain use, retail beyond competitors, the disclosure of the Union hybrid programs, centralized on scale goals, and intruder assassinations operations, concentrate on corporate attacks. Misinfo, all causes, deep fakes now. Trump is the largest source of misinfo. Elon Musk, Twitter 2, reject non-truth impact, no explanation, how against fixation, no impact misinfo. I mean, 19. Fake news affects us after incorrect people assume no evidence exists of fake news change. Only 7% of Americans visit fake news, only 2% of info consume fake news, less than 8% of news data news research reached decline before 2018. Concede that America's AI is successful now and that it will effectively regulate it, which means that China and Russia will never receive primacy. China never achieves AI primacy. For scholars, voice conservative leaders, a gap between capabilities and tech, majority of experts believe yes, it appears behind China's scholars, no deficiency intelligence is still infancy, no issues with AI, hinder application data, cyber comms and testing. Russia AI is terrible. Now it's back to Moscow. University has driven around Russia, say official to hear Western planning, constrained development of Russian subsidy highest environment and purchase balance, bringing US plans to take weapons, interspace effects, the building less than the existing laws, hypersonics as well as AVs. Russia faces lack of hardware and cancellation of research management. Ukraine viewed the gap between capabilities and Ukraine remained minimal. Between conferences and operate unlikely external governance and industrial constraints. 123, some countries constraints just behind US. The only three built with Chinese ships, presidents in out of Hamper. Yeah. Mark the honor card at Hamper. Yeah.
920.
second advantage. The advantage counter plan, the cyber counter plan, and then topicality.
One, two, advantage counter, one cyber mentality.
Yes, thank you. Does everyone have it? Turns out my analogy is not good. Okay. Does everyone have it? Everyone not good to go? Okay, cool. The block drop detective evidence means that you know grid collapse is guaranteed to cause extinction. They concede that the collapse is industrial civilization, which on the right to adapt to capacity to respond to every other existential threat, including the carbonless nuclear war, which means in that way, in terms of the cyber DA grid is not resilient. The grid is not resilient. The tropical crisis rate, which says that even if any one cause is unlikely to collapse the grid, the combination of things like demand surges, physical attacks, and warming, which they've all dropped, make it uniquely likely all other countries terrible drop the recovery of the 1C card, which is aspirational only by Russian cyber text. The Lambert card is also a terrible Sophocles producer to zero qualifications, and it's also an after of this Lambert 23 physical text physical also very basic terms moving forward. And this lecture is through physics starts museum using number 1 years events back after the Lambert cyber physical circuit the customers the drug panel structure presentation of Washington with the right wing extremist official card is also an after social indices about like whether you think there's something related what's happening. The older kind of stuff working additional political elsewhere the fact that it has a minute and all trying to get the effective and sure that's exciting. But it still matters and it still matters concede no zirconium virus BSL impact independently causes extinction. You can see the mutated pathogens that way because they overcome the trade-off between transmissibility and lethality. Bioterror defense is not applied because it's not about terrorists, but a release from a US lab. Lab leaks are large, even if it's only one lab. The H5N1 strain they've cooked up is so bad that it would kill the entire world if it were released. The photo defense is about natural pandemics, not the ones that the US government deliberately created to be as deadly as possible. The second advantage. Concede, impact defense, everything. We're not good for it. The advantage counterclaim. One, permutation do both. The hydrogen claim, obviously if they solve this, it links to their benefit because that benefit is impact terms to solving the grid. Independently hydrogen does not solve, it cannot scale up, it cannot economically scale up, and it's not technically feasible. And it's not technically feasible for all the reasons explained across links. Who cares what comes about the EU because they dropped the warrants in it. Hydrogen does not work, hydrogen does not work because of safety fears, as according to 22. Hydrogen reactions be lower, but it is effective in reaction with hazardous safety. Hydrogen is also long period of hydrogen letting gender. New hazardous safety issues extended to social dimensions, experts, necessary concerns, remain a significant barrier to develop public consumption of other technologies. Swiftly, as if the role of the global transition, the BSL-4 plan also does not solve even if air gapping and having people island reactors or whatever the hell prevents people from directly hacking the military. It does not solve our internal link, which is we run a card in the species that says independently civilian labs could cause a BSL-4 release, which no part of the kind of solves. There's no explanation how the 2NC does it, so you don't give the 2 an already explanation. Anything else there? Okay, yeah, cyber counterclaim. Permutation do both. The people believe the declaration is the overall signal of the plan, especially because there is no link to this disadvantage. They've offered a single card that says improving the civilian grid resiliency makes China will lash out and Newcastle want to see evidence about kicking Chinese hackers out of the grid, and says that they want to be able to hack our NC3 systems. We want to be able to hack our NC3 systems. No part of the plan changes that. It just means that they cannot. It just means that the civilian grid is more resilient to attacks. If I'm going to explicitly concede their explanation that the only internal link is mutual vulnerability. Both the 1NC card and the 2NC card are about hacking our NC3 and nuclear command and control systems. There is no link to that. They can still do that directly if they want. They just can't hack the civilian grid in order to cause that. This is not at all inconsistent with the 1AC internal link calculation. Our argument was that we need to prevent a US overreaction by preventing hacks on the civilian grid, but there is no reason that preventing attacks on the civilian grid makes our NC3 invulnerable. We never said any part of that because we didn't read a cyber retaliation impact, so none of this matters. And independently making the grid vulnerable means the US will pre-delegate launch authority causes their impacts. That's where's the card? Albertson 1. Information warfare is kind of recommended control, distracts and religion, make it possible effective at any expressions, delegate any individual trainers, and recommend technical and prevention actions and rate reviews, increases because the enemy is losing the enemy concerns, and will not make more shorter more likely to injure instead of yielding more false dawn, and that part is just fine because they gave the mutual vulnerability arguments to in the one in our topicality. The block lifted unfunctional limits, drop the absent expansion addition and for decarbonization, that's all. But they're often because it means even for interpretation of those messages versus MBIs, all those MBIs must be tied to. And part of the plan to build transmission is guarantees them the dealings and guarantees the negative in all circumstances. That's GG's, the Tracy said, solve limits, block dropped it, and also two-line implementing control only consensus for topic solves their often because it checks small apps don't need net benefit because it can be routine. But there are net benefits like Kansas's COP29, Kansas's COP29 said, we, contribution park evidence says the producing market for topical, we meet the market evidence plan does two things. First, build transmission, that's not our MBI. Second, insurance. Market access, which is why we meet park. They don't read any of the highlightings on parts, so you shouldn't give it to them just by inserting infinite cards. But we do meet market access. Park defines it as that metering, inserted that there. That's the plan dictionary comment is then. And everything that public customer result of generating system for the utility grid. You get the meter, solar panels back to the solar panels back to the grid. The plan is not command and control. The plan has work guaranteed to improve market access, meaning RTOs cannot impose regulations discriminating against renewables sectors of market. Instead, renewables must compete neutrally within the market. That's a market-based incentive, which is part of the plan, which is MBI. And now their interpretation is cherry-picked and fringed. They've conceded our in the Mazel card, which says there's no consensus definition of MBI, and their part is defining MBI for the scope of the paper, which it's arbitrary to say that because Mazel is talking about two MBIs, then RF cannot be topical, so arbitrarily predicting one's unpredictable justifies case back and all RF is topical, especially with MBI. Can be taxonomized in any way possible. The terms their offensive limits are only useful if they are predictable, and you should find predictability. You should cite predictability based on literature. Non-community consensus which justifies chaos, and judge intervention. And lastly, prefer reasonability. Otherwise, there is an inevitable incentive to raise the margins and not any more arbitrary. It's not any more arbitrary or judge interventionist than competing interpretations and subjective readings of cards do not matter because that is inevitable in any debate. You should just debate better. I'm going to index some of the stuff they said about the counter interpretation. We exclude the vast. What? Oh.
Can you like slow down transmission?
Oh yeah, the transmission thing does not mean we do not meet our interpretation. Our argument is not that transmission is an MBI, but that transmission is an example of a clean energy policy, so it doesn't have to be an MBI. We exclude the vast majority of their case lists. Subsidies, offs, all lose to states, which is the 2AC flag and the 2AC drops. There's no reason that trade and M&A meet interpretation. The market evidence is clear and says that market friction reductions only means directly connecting stuff in the grid domestically, and there's no reason that we topical, and it also doesn't include eco-labeling, which is the only other thing in the case list.
How much coverage on it?
We have 731.
731.
I think you all sent out one down.
Oh, did I? Wait, we really cross pressed.
Can we stop that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, wow, Jesus, I'm sorry. Yeah, very sorry about that. Okay, I sent a very sorry about that. I was not intending to be a fussy sorry or whatever.
Scott out. Give us a second to open it up.
Yeah, of course.
7 minutes resuming. Are you good? Yeah. What was the answer to you don't meet your intro?
There were several.
The thing about transmission was that transmission is clean energy policy, not an MBI, and the answer to the rest of it was that the part of the part that's relevant says net metering is topical, and then the card that we are that.
Okay. Thank you. Advantage counter plan. Advantage 1. What do y'all think of?
Any cards?
No cards.
Okay. Then yeah.
Sure, you good enough?
Yes.
Okay. Always of magnitude, are you more worried about a storm causing a grid to go down or the total loss of mutually assured destruction, which is the only avenue for nuclear conflict? Removing grid vulnerability incentivizes China and Russia to shift to launch on warning postures and nuclear first strike because they lack the guarantee of a second strike capability, which guarantees nuclear conflict. Georgetown screwed up in the 2AC. They made 3 arguments on this flow and read 0 cards. Strike all new 1AR and 2AR extrapolation off your flow. They have conceded competent solvency. Again, it's perceived as credible, it generates uniqueness for the net benefit, and it also solves the first advantage. First is that there are no attacks. Adversaries will not launch cyber attacks if we share mutual vulnerability. They know that we will attack them if they attack us, and that they have no incentive to do so because of the tit-for-tat escalation. Second is that even if someone attacks, there's no escalation. The doctrine is consistent with how cyber attacks happen in the status quo. Major powers have historically chosen to avoid major cyber attacks in fear of retaliation, even when they have the capability, which demonstrates our cyber mutually assured destruction. Our evidence analyzes Chinese and Russian discourse and says that their white papers says that they do not retaliate to cyber attacks with any conventional, physical, or nuclear weapons, which proves our thesis. Third is that this solves a terminal impact of the poly crisis internally. Grid collapse can only cause extinction if it's exposed up to escalation and miscalculation with great powers. They have not articulated any distinct impact scenario other than it caused nuclear conflict, which was an assertion in the 1AR, which the content certainly solves. Permutation to both fails. First threshold is low, drop. They have conceded the uniqueness question. Russia and China are extremely fearful of the United States attempts to secure invulnerability now. Any risk of permutation is uncertain, triggers the leak. It's tri or die negative, and leaks to that benefit is linear, which means that if it leaks more, you know that content certainly solves the case, so you vote negative. Second is perception. Adversaries will not believe the declaration. The content is totally uncredible. If we declare we will not protect our grid, then we do so anyways. The permutation is worse than the status quo. It just cannot create mutually assured disruption. Third is grid updates. It's fast and certain. We've conceded 1AC solvency, so the plan creates total grid invulnerability through segmentation. This renders Russian and Chinese cyber attacks instantly inoperable, ending their strike security. Time frame outweighs. You only die once, so you vote negative to live another day, but intervening actor solves the impact, and we control the direction of Turns case. You know that the grid impact is slow because it's about a long-term decline in the grid's ability to overcome things like warming and rising demand, which obviously doesn't happen overnight. Judge hit the content if you think that the perm shields a leak. It's a logical extension of condom. This is a disadvantage to the affirmative. Now, they say no civilian internal leak, and our content is about NCP. First, remember that the leak is linear. Perception is all about risk of, which means that a risk of the leak is so triggered. Second, the lines between civilian and military are blurred. Remember that NC3 is entangled with civilian communication, information, satellites, which all depend on the grid. Cyber attacks do not begin with intrusion into nuclear weapons. They start smaller, which necessarily means that China and Russia need access to civilian sites. Third, misunderstanding. Grid updates can also be misinterpreted as a prelude to a broader strategy to cyber vulnerability. Fourth is that their evidence certainly talks about military capabilities. We re-highlighted explicit 1AC internal leak evidence that says that the way they solve the bio leak stuff is by updating the grids of military sites, which proves that they directly link to this argument. There's no civilian nuclear distinction created by the 1AC solvency. 5. Our evidence does talk about defend forward, but they dropped that the June evidence is speaking to a broader strategy of increasing defensive invulnerability. Karastaf is not only about NC3, but also about civilian systems as well. It says that if one party has a quote high cyber defense level, this too creates it creates an incentive for a first strike preceded by a cyber attack against a potential adversary's command and control system. Yes, cyber 6. Only our evidence speaks about Russian and Chinese motivations. Perkovich says that they assume the worst assumptions about America. They've also considered every one in our argument on the second advantage that China and Russia are defensive realists, that they act against American encirclement and act out of fear, which all proves our thesis. Yes, cyber internal link in the AF1AC make explicitly says that cyber vulnerabilities are what Russia and China takes advantage of in the grid. The impact add-on is new, so you strike it off your flow. It's about info wars, not grid vulnerabilities, and it goes negative. Says the problems are use or lose pressures, which only exist when countries do not feel secure in their second strike. The plan causes that, but the content alone solves it, so they've just run a new impact add-on for us. Advantage content. Concede perm just a test of competition. Advantage 1. Grid is up to cyber, grid collapse tend to destroy cyber mutually assured destruction, which is out internally, and they have not articulated how it goes nuclear. Grid is resilient against quality crisis, demand, and extreme weather. This answers the overview and 1 hour solutions of drops. First, it's already multiple different systems. The energy is safe, and it has backup nodes that already pre-exist at Stanford. Second, weather is incorrect. Grids already survive the hottest summers, and even the longest heat waves last at most a month. Impact evidence is about prolonged failure of the grid, which they do not access. That's clear ones. Third, at least 5 different grids exist, and there's thousands of companies with nodes and supplies. This means physical attacks might take out a few companies, but thousands of others question that's blue shield. Fourth, demand is naturally resolved. It's profitable for companies to fill this demand, so they will self-correct and introduce more supply. 5, they conceded that China and Russia are both defensive and weak now. They only attack when feel threatened and are not revisionists. That's every card, Samuel, Carter, and Strait, which was dropped and conceded by the 1 AR. Now, this does not take out the cyber counterplan because there are still vulnerabilities on the cyber domain, but our argument is that there will not be backups that trigger their impact. The rehiding of November is incorrect, still concludes negative, and says that those things are not existential or do not cause civilizational collapse. Ucho says small tax companies to lose some money, not that they're existential. No lab impact. First is that labs are sealed, pressurized, and space-suited. These are physical barriers, which means electricity does not matter. That's Chamley, conceded by the 1 AR. Second, even if it leaks, they drop that it's counterintuitive. Masking and quarantining means that no matter how bad the virus is, it cannot go through the walls, so if everyone stays at home, it can't cause extinction. Third, they conceded the rehiding that only 20 million died. No new answers. 4, our impact might be about natural pandemics, but it proves that even engineered ones cause cooperations and countries to turn inwards because diseases unite humanity, so there's no chance of conflict. That's further. They also dropped the case takeout and advantage campaign. Microgrids are impossible without hydrogen fuel cells because nothing can take on the load of renewable energies. Concede that hydrogens cannot be scaled up fast enough, which takes out the app.
342.
deterrence holds, otherwise nuclear war is inevitable. If the world of the status quo happens faster than their impact, which would be below all, which means it outweighs the line by line stuff isn't wrong. They dropped the holy crisis frame. All of their evidence assumes the past. Our evidence is the only cards that are future predictive of emerging polycrisis. The combination of threats like extreme weather, things like extreme heats, wildfires, droughts, hurricanes, and extreme cold all make the grid incredibly vulnerable because natural gas plants will overheat or freeze, which causes them to go offline. They've also dropped things like surging demand, ensure that we literally can't meet the amount of electricity demand happening now to do things like crypto mining and data centers, which are an exponential increase. That's the helper card, and failing infrastructure because of lack of transmission build out, and the fact that our transmission lines are incredibly old means that they'll break under the pressure. All that outweighs and is future predicted. The Chang evidence is fantastic and is more future predicted than any of their cards. The 2NR said it's multiple systems which will be answer the load. Second, they said backup generators. That's wrong. It's a new 2NR warrants to track for your flow. But the what is the guttural evidence is it's impossible because nationwide grid collapse means you literally can't truck in supplies or pump fuel, which means backup generators can't run because they don't have fuel to operate in the first place. The weather card is wrong. The Clawin's evidence is indicted and cross-exed. The last line says that things are getting worse in the future. It's only talking about past empirics. It's not future predictive like our evidence. So the 1AC Chang evidence is much better. Fourth, there's the segmentation. The usual evidence goes affirmative. They drop the re-highlighting that says even small catastrophes can be catastrophic and that it's impossible to imagine what would happen if we suddenly lost everything like oil markets. It's incredible. You should read it after the debate. But even if not, usual doesn't assume polycrisis threat and is super old. So refer recent predictive evidence. Profit solves because companies will must fill demand. Also new in the 2NRs are striking for your flow, but they literally can't fill demand if they don't have transmission because you can't get electricity from where it's generated to where it's being used. The sixth warrant was that China and Russia are defensive and weak now. This we will concede it. It takes out the cyber term because it means they will never attack. The explanation in the 2NR as to why it doesn't apply made no sense, just because even if they win that the grid is vulnerable to cyber attack, if China and Russia are defensive realists, they would never have an incentive to attack in the first place, regardless of if we do the app, and they certainly do not have a card that parses this distinction. The Lambert evidence is affirmative. They dropped it from a Fox News reporter who obviously has an invested interest in downplaying threats, and the re-highlighting that demonstrates Lambert believes the grid is still vulnerable. The usual evidence also app that was above. The hydrogen takes out the case stuff is wrong, just that their evidence is aspirational, but our internal links are reverse causal. Increasing distributed energy generation is sufficient to solve grid resiliency as is building infrastructure. That's all the cards in the 1AC, and they don't have any evidence that speaks to it. The counterplan is hot nonsense. They straight up do not have a card that makes this link argument, and you'll be hard pressed to find one in that card doc that matters, because our evidence is incredibly specific on the question of grid collapse uniqueness. The plan is both necessary and insufficient to solve it, which outweighs your reverse causality. In your decision calculus, you can have much higher epistemic confidence that the plan solves an impending slew of threats to the grid now that it's necessary and sufficient, but you can certainly not be confident that it's the make or break for whether or not China and Russia put their missiles on alert. The permutation obviously solves it. It declares mutual vulnerability posture in grid space. That clearly solves if Russia and China care about us being mutually vulnerable, then telling them we are is obviously sufficient. If not, then the counterplan fails, so you vote affirmative on presumption. Renewable penetration obviously is not key to launch a warning posture from China, and if it was, then that's stumped by the fact that we're gradually transitioning now. The plan is just scaled in time. No evidence says that they would perceive the plan as enhancing grid stability. It is a technocratic market tweak, and they have no evidence that says that the plan will be sufficient, which matters. They've tried so hard to beat the permutation. They set the link threshold way too low in the 2NR. First, they said that misunderstandings are inevitable. That proves that the counterplan doesn't solve. They do not have a card that China will misperceive other actions now, like things in the Biden administration. Two, they said that Russia and China will always make worse assumptions. That takes out the counterplan's solvency because it demonstrates even if we promise the mutual vulnerability, Russia and China will inevitably make worst case assumptions anyways, which is also a DAT screw. The risk logic in the context of the perm is silly. You should not vote negative on any risk. It triggers a link that does not make sense unless you can explain why they wouldn't believe the permutation but would believe the counterplan, or why the plan is sufficient to cause a logical warning posture. It does not solve the case. The 1A was so clear that there are tons of non-cyber factors that make the grid vulnerable. So even if the counterplan solves grid vulnerability from cyber attacks, they cannot harden against weather, physical attacks, demand, and infrastructure, all of which is above. Grid collapse causes extinction from tons of avenues that aren't escalation. The conflict in nukes, which is the Dinkenberger evidence, no judge hit if one of permutation, and it proves that shields keeping distance and perm debating, which is worse for debatability. But if you do decide to judge it, there's no linear DA. Their argument is that China cannot hack our military systems, and that's bad for stability. They can clearly still do that post-plan, which just make the grid so that the grid doesn't collapse. China would a cyber attack us, which matters, because in order to win a link, they need to prove that China needs to be able to hack the civilian grid to remain confident in their ability to prevent offensive cyber attacks. This is nonsense with every card they've read, so that China primarily cares about their ability to hack our NC3, which is separate and not related to the civilian grid. The 1NC June evidence says China cares in a scenario where, quote, the U.S. campaign actively kicks out all identified Chinese access to electrical grid to shut down CNC servers and disrupt internet access of a Chinese OCO, which is not what the plan does. The 1NC terrorism evidence says vulnerabilities in command and control of nuclear capabilities create similar incentives. Such vulnerabilities should not be removed unilaterally, since if one party to the confrontation has a high cyber defense level, this too creates incentive for first strike. The perception and entanglement explanation is silly. Yes, China can take out our insecurity by having the civilian grid, that is fine, because both the YMC and YNR say that China's primary strategy for taking down the NC3 system is to hack news directly. There is zero reason that China thinks the plan precludes NC3 changes into the logical assertion without a warrant, and if it's true that perception is the only thing that matters, any signal worth freedom of the grid causes China to nuke us, then Biden's initiative last year should have caused the DA, in order to meet the current, set the link threshold so low that like the counterplan either doesn't solve or like the script makes it inevitable, so there is no linearity. Okay, I'll try Dr. Josh.
Did you all make a card doctors?
Yep.
What?
That card doc is set. I realized I forgot to include a couple cards in the card doc, so I resent it.
did not, but I would go for it.
Kind of feels a little bit bad. You know, they're like even one seat higher or lower than Michigan or Maine, so they're not that.
Sure. What's it, Bruno?
We were about.
Do we games?
I do have a game, yes.
Hell yeah.
We did winner. They are. They're. Yeah, I mean, I do. They're a little awkward. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do with it, but it is kind of nice to have.
No, exactly. I also don't have any and guest display at my apartment.
Yeah, I'll put it like, you know, I got my like little trophy bookcase, and then I'll just lay the cake right next to it.
There's a system where I like to go where it's just this main office, but I never
Yeah, they only got rid of us for a while.
I feel like they came to be a worthwhile donation to the Kansas City team. I don't have a strong use for it, and would, you know, put it somewhere, I think. Georgetown.
Yeah, we have a little pile in the corner of the old ones from like the first wave of this tournament, and sometimes people will pick it up and just like swing it around a little bit. You know, a little danger, a little.
I like this game, but they're giving out belt buckles, and I kind of maybe would prefer that.
That's
Like,
true. I know that.
I know that it's not as like,
Wait till you.
well, you know, Kansas debate, yeehaw belt buckle. I think we could, you know,
How
make
long
it
do you
work.
think the game lasts?
Oh, it's like 10 minutes. So once you do wax, we do like take a break or like sit on it or something.
Kansas City has one.
Good. Congratulations to both teams on making it to the doubles. Excellent debate. The decision was 3 over the Athens first one. I can go first. The crux of my decision was essentially the link vagueness argument that they were pretty consistently setting up, which sort of created this double bind where there's a lot of activities that your cards are describing that would be bad that seem like they're occurring now, and maybe the counterplan can resolve the fears and ambiguities from those activities. To the extent that that is true, it seems very difficult for me to explain why the counterplan would not be enough to resolve the fears and ambiguities created by the comparatively much more benign, technocratic, not immediately threatening, and extremely partial security measure that doesn't even secure the most important vector for a Chinese attack on the US nuclear arsenal. Admittedly, there's some places where I think that the app is playing it fast and loose, just in the sense of not every component is being extended all the time. Things that I think were missed opportunities were Biden IRA thumps is pretty clearly a kill shot, never answered by the neg. Don't think it was in the 1 AR, but it was in the JC and 2 AR, but would have been nice. And really only half of the double bind was ever seriously advanced by you all. You all were way more on demonstrates that the plan would not be sufficient to create anxiety. But they did read through some of the lines and pull out basically just you said that China would interpret it through the worst case lens, that they would interpret these relatively limited acts as being the prelude to a larger buildup. It's very difficult for me to understand why that wouldn't apply to hunt forward operations that exist in the status quo. You have this linearity counterframe. I don't think that your DA is not linear. But given the low threshold that is set on the other stuff, I kind of think that your DA is more like most of the risk happens at the front end. Like, technically, I guess it is true that even if some of this worst case scenario planning explanation is accurate, like, once a lot of it has been triggered, technically more security could make it marginally worse. But like, given the low threshold, I basically think that like the largest part of the increase of the risk happens at the beginning rather than at the end of that curve. That may have been enough, but I thought that you just were not winning very much defense on the case. I thought that the counter plan, like, if it solves the, in light of all the other stuff, like maybe the counter plan solves the anxiety from cyber and like solves Russian and Chinese cyber attacks. Russia and China defensive, like that's real, they won't do cyber attacks, fine. But your cards on just like defense to polycrisis definitely say like grid stable now but trending worse. And their cards all say by how much trending worse and in what capacity it could experience a catastrophic failure. And there's like no real mitigation on the terminal impact of civilizational collapse, although I don't think Denkenberger says solves nuclear war, though because it is Denkenberger, probably another part of that article says that, but I don't think that the card that you included here does. Hydrogen sub-mitigation, not presumption because answered by transmission build-out arguments. I basically think like imperfect reliability from any given intermittent installation, but can provide significant reliability in the aggregate if interconnected and can transmit between regions. This was their consistent explanation, and I thought that it was eminently predictable that they would apply it in this way, so I was not that worried about it being new. It is a slight ding on solvency, but also to the extent that you ding their solvency argument, that also reduces your link. So unless you want me to vote on presumption with this, I don't really know how to factor it into the rest of the debate, and I don't think it's presumption, so just kind of out there. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I don't really have that much to add. I think that the DA is linear, but that the increase of the risk that the affirmative would cause is pretty low in comparison to how much the perm, I think, probably resolves a lot of it. I thought that it was kind of weird that it kind of felt like nobody remembered that Trump is president now, which kind of complicates some of the uniqueness arguments or the counterplan solvency. I don't know why China and Russia would believe if Trump said that we're defensive now, I promise. But that was just kind of neither here nor there. I think that a lot of the re-highlightings of the link arguments make me pretty skeptical that the things that the affirmative does would be misperceived by Russia and China, and if they are, then they probably would have attacked if the IRA gave a bunch of money towards improving the grid and hardening resilience and all that stuff. I think that even without cards, I think that the negative should make some terminal impact defense claims, just there are people that live in places without infrastructure that are able to survive, so blackouts are probably not great, but probably don't kill everyone, and there's no scenario for an existential risk that they've really isolated that's coming now that we need the grids to provide. So I could be persuaded that a blackout doesn't zero the human race, but there's not really any pushback by the negative in this debate. So I think that, if there is a risk of a blackout, that's more of a concern than a short-term Russia-China conflict that I think is pretty mitigated by the quality of your evidence in comparison to the unique uncertainties that the act is going to put.
Yeah, I filter most of the link arguments as you put them through perception in the context of perm do both, right? The 1AR, or the 2AR spin to me of the app is perceived as minor technocratic tinkering, which could be explained better in my case, how kind of shapes the well, they think that we're attempting to harden our military assets if the United States is we're actually not, and factually they're still vulnerable, means that I think the general thrust of the link evidence, or the link arguments is pretty because the only official declaratory policy for cyber operations is we are mutually vulnerable and we are endorsing that, embracing whatever. I think that the June evidence could kind of package these things more clearly for the AF that's purely defensive operations will be perceived as eliminating mutual vulnerability because we don't declare our intentions. The permutation definitely solves that. And then just materially, they're still vulnerable. Makes sense to me. And I think it was correct to not go for the labs. I have no idea what our answer to, but they're like hermetically sealed chambers. Like I don't, like the doors open and then the disease floats out, like, yeah. But that's really all I have to add. Your like solves the case stuff is non-responsive to the like weather and increasing demand from electricity systems is what causes blackouts.
I had a couple questions about the presentation. First is, there was an argument about why the current is uniquely worse, like even worse than the status quo. The reason why is because the counterplan has the United States tell Russia and China that we're not going to basically update our grid. And then the plan updates the grid. And so our argument was that that uniquely sends a bad signal, different from anything in the status quo, because it's literally being hypocritical and relying on our intentions despite making this policy statement. So how did that factor into your decision?
I think there's a perceptual difference between like technological upgrades, because like they could have just been like, listen, we keep having these bad blackouts because of weather events. The United States is like, we need to improve our grid so we don't have those blackouts. Is different than like we're hardening it against like military attacks. And that's also like an effect of the plan, not a mandate of the plan. Right? Like our military defensive capabilities are not like
We've conceded the 1AC interlink, and I think their evidence is actually quite good. Right now, Russia and China are intruding into our grid, and that's one avenue. Like that is the avenue. That's their 1AC evidence. It says that's the avenue Russia and China use cyber attacks, and we've conceded 1AC solvency as well, which says that there's 100% certainty that the grid updates that they do solve all cyber attacks forever and makes the US grid invulnerable to cyber attacks.
But what they conceded from you is that that's not true. Like, you read a bunch of cards that said that there were different attack vectors that were significantly more important. And so, like, I hear where you're coming from in terms of looking hypocritical, but the way that I understood it was just like, there's, like, admitting mutual vulnerability is a broader idea than just like, I do not interpret that as like, we promise literally never to do anything. I interpreted that as like, we go to Russia and China and we say, we acknowledge that we are vulnerable to you in this space. One thing I will note is, I did, upon opening your doc, for the first time, see that the counterplan said that we were declaring mutual vulnerability in grid space in particular. Like, I think that if that were a significantly larger feature of your explanation in the debate, that could have helped this argument gain a little bit more credibility. But like, that was not a thing that I understood until after the debate was over, and like I didn't really see it as being a feature of any speech. So the way that I essentially understood it was like, we go to Russia and China, we say we acknowledge mutual vulnerability, we are vulnerable in the NC3 cyberspace, and we are making no attempt to secure ourselves in that area. So while you are conceding that they eliminate grid vulnerability, that is different than what they need to establish mutual nuclear deterrence.
On the issue about the vector of cyber attack, like NC3s being the more important one, I'm curious, where did you get that? Because it seems like both of the June cards, they talk explicitly about electric grids. They talk extensively about critical infrastructure.
I think they talk about critical information networks, which is not the same. And I
Which
don't.
card?
The cards where you, like everywhere where you highlighted CI, that's critical information.
No, the first June card, CI is critical infrastructure.
Sorry, let me open it. Like, sorry, creates dialogue and solves escalation? Or what?
Yeah. Like it's quite explicitly about grid and critical infrastructure.
Again, I think that there's a difference between, I think you'll agree, because, and they have explicitly made the argument multiple times that we are not totally vulnerable now. Like, there are hunt forward operations. There is not absolute vulnerability. I think that where we're misaligned is, this is why I was describing the curve of risk as it maps onto the degree of vulnerability to attack.
But the creates invulnerability in grid.
But not aggregate invulnerability, which is what is important for strategic stability. You're assuming that mutually assured destruction occurs in a vacuum within each individual sector, whereas what they're describing is essentially
I'm not
that
sure what the other sectors are,
NC3,
but like which evidence says that?
the other June cards.
The other June card is also about the grid. It is not
It
mentioned.
mentions the grid, but like the reason why all these people are mentioning the grid is because they're talking about fundamentally cross-domain deterrence. Like they're saying, yes, if we were to attack China, a thing that gives China confidence now is that they could respond in a cross-domain capacity by imposing punishment on us in other sectors. One of those is the grid. I agree with that, but that is different than, is there a mutually assured destruction relationship with nuclear weapons?
I just don't think that's what the evidence says. And also, I don't know. I feel like
Again, I don't think any of us are voting on you win zero risk of your linear thing. I think you probably do. It's just that the case is like really big.
And for me on this, I think that the 1AR like asserts military systems are still vulnerable. We don't regulate those, whatever. And the 2NR doesn't disagree with that. It says, but they still are trying to use civilian sectors to get into our NC3 systems. But they're like, it still factually is vulnerable.
And importantly, we say that it's vulnerable,
Yeah.
which given the answer to the earlier thing that I said, that's like, given how I interpreted this stuff, that I don't think it's hypocritical, I think that the additional assurance that is provided by the counterplan helps close a little bit of that gap too. Like here, what Perkovich says, US and China both worry about cyber threats with their nuclear ISR. Such threats, while difficult to detect and interpret, can undermine confidence as deterrent and exacerbate worse assumptions about aggressiveness early in the conflict. There's a risk that one state might attempt a cyber attack the adversary's conventional forces. The recipient could believe that to be the beginning of a nuclear war. Like all of that is talking about mutual deterrence within the military. Like there's a conventional component to it, there's a nuclear component to it, but like I think of that as describing a dynamic that is pretty different than what your link is about.
I just don't think that makes it so small. I guess I have one more question about this, which is on the issue of like numbers and our evidence describing defend forward operations. I feel like that June evidence is saying that like it says in a future crisis, if the US starts a campaign to kick out Chinese access from the grid, that is what could cause China to be very fearful. But it seems like, first of all, that's not describing the status quo, and second of all, it seems like that is what the AF is doing, because the AF is kicking Chinese access out of the electric grid by updating the grid so that it's decentralized and it's secure and it can't be cyber attacked.
It does one of the things. The rest of them are shut down Chinese CNC servers, disrupt internet access of Chinese offensive cyber operations units, all without explicitly communicating US intentions. So number one, it's only one out of several axes of vulnerability. Number two, the firm does communicate US intentions. I like, and by the way, like, no, the plan is not to defend forward. Like, the plan is not to defend forward operations. So those are like actually a different thing. I do agree with you that it's speaking in the conditional about what would happen in a crisis. Like, not that that came up in the debate, but for what it's worth, I do also think that that kind of makes this card even worse for you in a way, because it is assuming that these aggressive actions are occurring on a background of there being a military crisis. So if you're right that there's no military crisis now, to me that removes the applicability of this card completely, because it only is saying that all of these actions would be interpreted as aggressive on the background of a crisis. And like, are you saying that the US would not attempt to shut down cyber access by China in a crisis? You have not read a card that says that, and the app has said that there are cyber defenses now, which, like, I guess I don't know this for a fact, but like we have an NSA and we have a cybercom, and that is their entire job.
I guess that makes sense. Should do not have to T.
Maybe, yeah. I like even earlier in the debate, as I was listening along to the card, I did kind of see this RFD coming, and I did not see anything as clearly wrong. I didn't see anything that was as clearly going wrong for you on T.
What are some like impact defense arguments against grid that would be more persuasive, other than just like pointing out that we could survive like a grid collapse?
Also, just like uniqueness arguments, like it might not be fully integrated, but there are distributed renewables now. There are microgrids now. Like in the event of a blackout, there would be large parts of the country that would probably not be able to get back online quickly, but military bases have already started implementing some of these things, like hospitals and other critical infrastructures have already started implementing their own things. Like data centers are already trying to acquire their own distributed electricity. Like the claim that like all of the infrastructure of the United States is like connected and we have not started in the direction of increasing resiliency to blackouts is incorrect. So like there are moves in that direction that insulate us from all dying if there's something. Like, there was never really a part of the negative that's like this impact is kind of silly. And their impact is kind of silly.
Me personally, I think these like generic, like we need to have adaptation to nebulous existential threats that are unlisted and don't have a warrant for why they're existential in the card. It's just like not a very big impact.
Agreed. And like you're also kind of in a bind because since you're impact turning, you have to say that in the face of all of these things, we are not going to do anything. And to the extent that you say the status quo grid is going to become more robust as a result of various investments, that jumps your turn. And like the idea that the status quo grid in a non-built up form is sufficiently built up to respond to all the things in the 1AC is just like not a good place to be in terms of the like balance of the evidence. So like I would normally recommend like spending some money on infrastructure build outs. Like I don't think that they have a particularly good reason why it has to be a market-based mechanism that coordinates a lot of this stuff. So like some of that I think could be reasonable, but it's obviously very hard for you to do because you're impact turning. And yeah, like no terminal defense.
I also just like I didn't decide that the AF is huge. I just thought that the link was very small. So like it's not like you don't have enough defense. You just if the link was really big, I would go there.
That's all I have. Thank you.
I guess a question for T. How are we feeling about athletes or counter-interpretation? Like, one application sufficient makes sense or thought we were in trouble?
Yeah, I wasn't really following what I was saying there, but maybe if I had looked at the cards more closely, I would know. But
I'm kind of in the same boat. I didn't read any of the T cards.
Got it,
It's kind of like a card question.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then other question would just be the like plan must be transmission solves because it means they can always read DAs or like takes out of it. Do we like an argument like to think that delta limits offense here or?
yeah, the functional limits thing was going better for you than it often does.
Okay, cool. That's good. Thanks.
Real quick, do y'all think we should have kicked the grid advantage of 1AR and been like grid invulnerable now means DA non-unique and then just gone for the AI stuff, or should we go back
Yeah,
and
I guess
forth?
they kicked the AI stuff. They kicked their AI stuff.
But like, is the grid not vulnerable now? Stuff like they can't hack us, or like there's no like massive shutdowns.
Or like, I guess if their link is like making the grid invulnerable makes China scared. Like if grid is vulnerable, I guess because the thing we were kind of worried about is like the perception-ese stuff because that's like where the link was going. So
Well, in the 2NR, they did say they claimed that none of their cards ever applied to cyber. That might be right. I don't like none of the cards in their doc are very good on no cyber vulnerability, right?
I think it would muddle it, but it wouldn't be like a TKO.
I certainly don't think any of the impact defense says Russia and China believe that our grid is invulnerable. Like the fact that they're all responding to people that think the grid is vulnerable probably proves that there's at least some perception that the grid is vulnerable, even if they're factual.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think that's it from us. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good luck. Good tournament.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Actually, I have one more question. I question 1AR have done link. Okay.
Like not to be glib, but a card about the app would be important. I don't. You're debating about this was as good as like I would have expected. Like I thought the 2NR spin was like valiant. Like had lots of subpointing, lots of different threads. I just like I don't know. There's only so much you can get here without having a card.
Do you have thoughts about given that we didn't have case-specific card, the 1 hour should have been Stanford.
Actually, I think I would have, just as a side note, I think I would have been much more amenable to the link if we had an argument that was more clear about what the app has to like create protections for NC3 systems, which probably requires process of the 1AC. I don't know if they're just like never going to admit to that, but like they might. And it seems kind of important for their cyber scenario that like our military operations are secure.
They have run this pre-delegation thing in the 1AC in the past with some pretty similar cards, so like maybe that could work.
Do you have any thoughts about what the 3C, the 1 hour should have been instead?
But I think the cyber stuff was fine, and I think the 2AC was poor to respond to this argument, to be fair. I think it was the 1AR's assertion and like just statement NC3 systems are separate, and you being like, but this would be the vector they want to use now is a problem. And the card that you pointed to on that is just like about labs, not NC3 systems. Unless I was misunderstanding the purpose of that card.
Do you like have a real version of the natural gas DA? Because like in concept that is a good argument. I don't. As presented in the 1MC, it doesn't seem like you cared about it very much, so that's why I'm phrasing it like this. But if you have a file about that would fit in here nicely.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything, there was nothing that was just like TKO'd by the 2AC. Like, the market's bad.